Did you hear that?
And hello and welcome to Haunting Live podcast. Thank you guys so much for tuning in this week. We do have a special guest here this week who we will be bringing on in just a moment. Her name is Tina. She's known as the Moonstone Medium. And we're going to be talking to her about her journey through mediumship and how she developed that. And she also does something else very interesting, and we're going to be talking about that as well with her today. That's something we've never had here on the podcast yet. But thank you guys so much for tuning in this week. It is episode number 16 of season 2 already. Things are just flying by here at Haunting Live Podcast, and we appreciate you guys tuning in here live and joining us here on Facebook today, like each and every week. We appreciate you following us on social media and, of course, sharing our posts and everything. And, of course, you guys can always find us on the podcast apps later on if you miss a live show right here on Facebook on Haunted Live Podcast. But with that, guys, thank you so much for tuning in this week. We appreciate that. But let's bring on in Tina here this week. Hi, Tina. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Trevor?
Doing wonderful. It's a wonderful weekend. And thank you so much for taking time out to be here with us on Haunting Live Podcast. We appreciate that.
You're welcome.
So I understand you're a psychic medium. You also do a whole bunch of other things like Reiki, and another thing that I want to talk to you about too that you have on your website I saw. But I'm going to first of all ask you the general questions about how you first got into mediumship. What drew you into the mediumship field?
So I've always been interested in spirit and in basically things that can't be explained ever since I was a child. So I was always really, really drawn to anything to do with the spirit world. And I remember when I was about 10 or 11, I remember taking a book out of the library on palm readings. And so I read that cover to cover, and then I went to the schoolyard and during recess was giving everybody palm readings. So it was something that I always felt drawn to. It also helped that my mother had some psychic ability herself. She always used to talk about her feelings, and when she would get a feeling of something, it would come true. You know, the telephone would ring, and she always knew who was on the other end of the phone. And there were lots of little things throughout. So she was also very, very open to the spirit world as well. So because I've always been empathic as well, I didn't fully understand what was going on as a child and as a teenager, but I would pick up like strong energies from other people throughout that time. And I specifically, there's one incident, and I still recall that morning when I walked into my high school. I was in grade 10, and I went to a really large high school in Windsor, and the high school had probably, I don't know, it was the huge school of well over 2,500 people. And so typically when you walked in, there were lots of noises going on, lots of students milling about, lots of things happening. And that morning when I walked into the school, it felt like there was complete silence. I didn't hear a sound coming in. And so I walked into the school, and at that time, the grade 10 lockers were down in the basement and kind of down a bit. So it was quite a walk, and it was almost towards the back of the school. So I'm walking through the school, and the entire time I'm walking, I'm not hearing anything. I'm not hearing laughter. I'm not hearing other students. It's just dead silence. And as I got closer to the lockers, then I could hear sounds, and I could hear another student I knew who was crying and banging the lockers, and there was a lot, like it was so heavy. And as it turned out, a student in my grade had suicided the night before. And so that's what had happened. But I still recall that feeling when I walked into the school that morning, that there's something wrong. And I think that was the first time where I really realized that that I could pick up stuff. But I still put that aside, sort of went on with life, and really didn't think a whole lot of it. You know, I was still very open to chatting with people if other people had experiences, and I was drawn to other people who had experiences to share, and wanted to hear about their experiences with the spirit world always, and wanted them to be my new best friends throughout my life. And it wasn't until I lost my brother in 2008 that things really started shifting and changing for me. I was the oldest and he was the youngest, so there's a span of 10 years between us. And he died suddenly. He was 31. And it just rocked my world and really made me take a hard look at where I wanted to be. And so so I really started at that point to make some shifts and changes in my life, and really wanting to become my best self, wanting to live the best life that I could live, live every moment. My father passed 5 years later. His passing was very, very different. He was almost 94. He was very ready to go. Very, very different passing. But after he passed, I decided I was going to go see a psychic medium. So I did. So I went to see a medium, and in the course of that reading that she was giving me, she said, "You can see spirit. You can do this. You can see shadows." And it really planted a seed for me. And I thought long and hard about it. And then there were other things that were also making themselves aware to me. I had a friend who was getting into Reiki, and I had a longtime high school friend who also had been a Reiki master for many years. And so I started chatting with him, and got my level 1, my level 2 Reiki. And then I found Marianne Kennedy, and I had been wanting to do mediumship courses and for a long time, and nothing was fitting. So I was looking at her website, and she would offer various ones on the weekend, and invariably I would either be available the Saturday or the Sunday, but not for both days. And then one day I ended up having a cancellation because I had looked at her website again, and I thought, oh, I can't do it again because I'm not going to be available for one of those days. And then literally it was the Thursday before that class was supposed to start. She was full, and I had a cancellation for the weekend, and I was suddenly available. And I thought, well, I'm going to message her anyway. She doesn't know me. She didn't know me at that time. And I said, I'm going to message her anyway. And because I've been waiting so long to do these courses with her, and her response to me was, "I'll make space for you," and that was sort of the start that opened me up. And I spent after I took a number of courses with her, and I spent almost 2 years sitting in mediumship circles with her, and so just an incredible experience. And initially, when I was taking those mediumship classes, I was initially taking them because I wanted to connect with my own loved ones. I wanted to connect with my dad. I wanted to connect with my brother. That's why I initially was drawn to do this. And what I found was that when the sitters would come in and I was giving them readings, that's what sparked me. That's what motivated me. That's what I wanted to do. Is I really wanted to have the opportunity to provide them with messages from their loved ones, to be able to provide them with some comfort. And that's, that became everything for me, was just doing those readings for other people. So that's really how it all started.
Yeah, that's wonderful. We did have Marianne on our podcast here a while ago. She was a wonderful guest, and she's always welcome back here as well anytime. And we look forward to talking to her again in the future. But during your development with her, how did that go? Was it a learning curve for you, or was it something that you fell into really easily?
It actually came fairly easily. I was surprised, actually. And I think the hardest thing is learning to trust the information that you're getting. So that's the most important key piece, is just to trust that. For me, my strongest sense is a knowing, although I often will also feel things through my body. So those are probably my two strongest senses. And it was just a matter of trusting the information I was receiving, knowing that that information was coming from somewhere outside of me, and didn't belong to me. It belonged to somebody else. And then just having the confidence to share all of that information. So that's really was the key piece. And so I was able to do that fairly quickly, and got to do some practice around platform mediumship, which is where you're standing in front of a group, large groups, small groups, and just delivering information that way. And that came really easily as well. And actually, I really enjoy doing that piece. And prior to the pandemic, was doing a lot of parties, and and just always loved having like those groups gather, those small groups, and being able to provide those group readings. So yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely the pandemic has changed things for everybody as well as us here at Haunting Live. We normally go and do investigations and do public events, and we can't do that. So the podcast was born out of that. How has that changed your day to day? Has it made it difficult for you to get messages through to people, or has it been easier for you to get messages through to people?
Well, it's actually, it really hasn't. If anything, I've been busier through the pandemic. So it's really interesting. So towards the end of 2019, I was feeling a pull. I was feeling this drive to really bump up my my learning. There were a couple of things that were sort of on the I had out on the back burner. One was because I was becoming a medical Reiki practitioner, and then the other one was learning how to read Akashic Records. So those were the two pieces that had been on the back burner for me. And then I found that towards the end of 2019, I was really feeling like 2020 was going to be a transformational year, not just for me, but for a lot of people. I didn't know why. I certainly never predicted anything close to this at all. But I just felt like it was going to be a really transformational year. And so in around January, February, I had signed up for to do my medical Reiki training with in New York City. And then I had also signed up for Akashic record readings, which were going to take place online. So they were going to be virtual, because that teacher, Linda Howell, she does a lot of her stuff virtually anyway. And then the pandemic hit in March, and like everybody is stunned. I knew it was going to be very, very long term. I knew it was definitely going into. I knew at the beginning it was going into 2021, that the rest of the year was going to be a write-off, and it was definitely going into 2021. And within a month, after the pandemic had started, I suddenly realized why I had felt this drive to really bump up myself spiritually. And it was really because everybody was going to need it. Like there were going to be a lot of us who were going to have to really step forward and be of service to other people, just spiritually, to be able to help them through what was going on, and to provide them with some comfort. So I realized this was not something that was going to be that we could all do in isolation. This was going to be, almost a global coming together of like-minded people to be able to really move things forward for people. So that's how that started, because the adding Akashic Records and the medical Reiki piece has been a recent piece that I've added in the past year, since the pandemic started.
Yeah, it definitely has changed a lot for everybody, especially in our field here. Like you're saying, a lot more people are getting that help that they need, I think, through different means now. But one thing I've asked a few different guests that we've had, especially in the last couple of weeks, is something that you just touched upon, and that is the fact that a lot more people are needing our help, and I think the whole world is coming together in that form. Do you feel that we as a world or a people are rising to a different level? Are we reaching a different level of mediumship, of ability? Do you think that's because of the pandemic, or do you think that's because we're more focused on things?
I think that's been coming for a while now. I know for myself, when I initially started taking courses, and just the number of people, even just in my area, who have some who are either psychics or mediums, or they do other things within the spirit realm with, other amazing things. They're energy healers. There are such a huge number of us. So in my other work, so in my other life, I'm also a social worker. And so typically I keep those things separate. But a couple of years ago, I discovered a conference called the Mind, Body, Spirit Conference. And it's been 3 years running now. So I missed the first year, but the second year was in person in Toronto, so prior to the pandemic happening. And then the third year was this past year, and that was virtual. So when I went down to Toronto for that conference, I was absolutely blown away, because I was sitting in a room with other social workers, other psychotherapists, people who were doing mainstream therapy and counseling. Also within that room, every single one of them was either an energy healer, a yoga instructor, a psychic medium. It was incredible. And for me, it was so incredibly validating as to what a huge movement this is. And it's really, and there's so many people who are much more open than they used to be. There are a lot of, I belong to some tarot groups. I like to play with tarot cards, and when I initially would start attending, some of these like tarot meetups, it was almost all women who were attending. And then right before the pandemic hit, it was almost half and half, where you had just as many women as you do men who are dabbling in tarot cards. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one other thing that's changed is a lot more people are getting into it nowadays. So you don't have to have that in your background. You can just sort of pick what's drawn to you and start working with it. So whether it's tarot cards, or whether it's pendulums, or whether it's whatever type of communication tool you want to use, that you're drawn to, right? That's what people, I think, are doing nowadays too. So, but you were mentioning just a few moments ago about something else that you deal with, and I like to bring that up and discuss that now as our main topic of discussion today. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it, but I think it's Akashic Records. I probably said that wrong, but could you tell us a little bit about what that is and explain to our listeners or what you do with that?
Sure. So Akashic Records are really, if you think about it as everybody having this file cabinet of all of the vibrational records having to do with you. And so that includes everything at a soul level. So that would include this lifetime, that would include past lives, that would even include things that are supposed to be happening in the future as well, right? So you've got this huge filing cabinet of everything to do with who you are at that soul level. And so these Akashic records are being the Lord of the Records are in charge of these Akashic records. I don't communicate directly with the Lord of the Records, but there are masters, teachers, and loved ones that I would be accessing. So they would be sort of the go-between between myself and those Akashic records of the person that I'm reading for. The types of information that typically can be found is with respect to your past lives. It could have information even just around an issue that you're dealing with. You know, how are you going to resolve that issue? So a lot of people will ask me what the difference is between doing a psychic reading versus an Akashic record reading, you know. And so when I give a psychic reading, it's typically using tarot cards as a bit of a guide, and I'm reading the person's aura in conjunction with that, you know, so getting information from them that way. With the Akashic records, what I am doing is I'm opening up their Akashic records. So there's a process to open up their records with their permission, of course. And then what I'm doing, it's almost like there's a different feel to it for me. It's really a therapeutic process with the Akashic record readings. So what happens is that they might be presenting with a particular problem or an issue or a dilemma, and so I'm having those conversations with them in terms of really trying to understand fully what their problem and their dilemma is, what's going on in their life, what's brought them to me. And then what I do is I ask their masters, teachers, and loved ones for some information in order to assist them. So our masters, teachers, and loved ones. So masters are beings of light, just like the Lord of the Records are beings of light. They've never walked this earth. Your teachers may or may not have walked this earth. You may have had contact with them in this life or another life, but you may not have. And then our loved ones, of course, we have known in this life. But when they come together, it's not as though it's an individual. You know, when you do a meditation, or when a loved one comes through in a mediumship reading, you can kind of describe that individual. You can feel their personality and be able to describe that. It's very different. They're coming together like a collective, the masters, teachers, and loved ones. So they're not coming together as individuals. So I would not be able to share, oh, you know, this is your, you know, Uncle Joe who's come, you know, to help with the Akashic Records reading. It really is just, it's that collective that I'm speaking with in order to provide them some guidance. And the other interesting thing that I found, and I can't speak for anybody else, I don't know if everybody has this experience, but for me, when I give an Akashic record reading, and I've done a little bit of automatic writing. So I've done some automatic writing on occasion. And when I read my own records, I have a pad of paper sitting beside me, and I've got a pen in my hand, because the way it comes through, if I'm reading my own records, if I'm asking for guidance from my masters, teachers, and loved ones, then basically how that comes through is I start automatically writing. That's how that happens. And so when I'm reading for other people, I'm not writing, but it's almost like an automatic speaking. So it's almost like I have no control over what I'm going to say. I just start talking, and it just flows like this. It's so different than when I'm giving a mediumship reading, or when I'm giving a psychic reading.
So is it a little bit like channeling then? Are they channeling through you to give you the information as a group collective? They're passing that information on, but they're channeling that to tell the person you're giving a reading for the information the way they want to sort of deliver it to? Are they kind of channeling it through to you?
That's how it feels for me. I don't know whether other people have similar experiences when they access Akashic records, but for me, that's what happens. Is it feels as though it's a channeling that's happening. So when people ask me, well, what's the difference, and should I have a psychic reading, or should I have an Akashic record reading? So typically, what I will say to people is, if they do have a specific dilemma, they're really struggling with someone, and they're wanting a light shone on that. They're wanting some illuminating light as to where to go, then they may want to have an Akashic record reading, in order to help provide them with that guidance and direction. You can still get that guidance and direction through a psychic reading as well. But this just really is focused. Whereas like a lot of times with psychic readings, when people will come to me for a psychic reading, usually they're wanting a more general reading and wanting to know what's going to happen in their love life, or with work, or things like that. But if you got a really specific dilemma going on, or something that you really could use some significant guidance, then that's where an Akashic record might be helpful. I've also on a few occasions done both for people too. So what I've done is on those occasions is I'll open up their Akashic records at the beginning of the reading. The reading's still an hour long, regardless of whether they're doing the psychic or Akashic or both. So I'll open up their Akashic records at the beginning. We'll start with some tarot cards, and then we'll kind of move forward from there. And then I'll also be speaking to the masters, teachers, and loved ones, and getting more specific information, and then closing the records again at the end of that process.
Right. So it sounds like if you want just like a general reading, just what's going on in your life, you can get like a psychic reading from you. Or if you want to find out more detailed specifics about a certain issue that you're having, then that would be the way to go.
Yes. Yes.
How much information is stored then in a filing cabinet for an individual? Like how much detail is actually stored in that cabinet? Do you know that kind of information, or?
It is so incredibly vast that you will never access. You will never, in your lifetime, you will never access all of that information, because it's so incredibly vast. So the information that they tell you what you need to hear at that time is basically that's, so you get this much, like just a little bit of information, but yeah, it's incredibly vast. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just curious about that because it was like you mentioned that there was so much information, but it's like, how do they determine what to give to you when you're doing a reading for somebody on that? I guess that's what that guardian being of light is for, is that guardian would know what that person is going in for the reading for, so they pass on the required information, I guess, right?
Yeah. The Lord of the Records is they're sort of they're the keeper of your filing cabinet, and then the masters, teachers, and loved ones are the ones that that pass on that information and are the go between, to be able to pass on that information. And I'm asking specific questions, so I'm gathering what it is that the what you're needing to know, and and asking specific questions to be able to get that information to you.
Okay, so it's sort of like a hierarchy where there's like a boss, and then the workers get the information for you and pass it on.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's right.
that's more easy explained that way, I guess.
That's
It's
right.
really interesting. I never heard of that topic before, so I wanted to kind of dive into it today here with you and sort of discover what that was all about. So it's really interesting. Are you sort of born with that? Like, is that, or is it compiled throughout your lifetime? Like, as you grow up and as you do certain experiences, is that information compiled, or is that already there for you?
It's well, I mean, because it's there at a soul level. So we have so for those who believe in reincarnation, right? We live many lives, and so so when we transition from one life to the next life, we're deciding before we go into our next life. We make soul contracts, so we decide what we're wanting to learn in that particular life. What do we need to know, right? So we have our past lives and our current life and our future lives, and then we have our lives between lives, because while we're waiting for our next reincarnation, there are jobs and things that we are doing within the universe. So it's so all of that information is stored. So it isn't even just it all about Trevor. It's all about Trevor at the soul level, in terms of all of like all of your past lives, everything.
Okay, that's great. I was just wondering if it was something that you have access to that's already there, or if it's something that you get sort of bits and pieces in as your life continues on. But that does make sense that if you have a past life or if you have a future life coming up, that information would already be there. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That information is always there for us as our lives are unfolding, right? It's always there. Yeah.
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 So have you had any interesting stories that you'd like to share about, say, that you had from a client in the past that you were dealing with this topic with them? Do you have anything you can share with us?
I have well, actually I have a couple of stories with respect to the mediumship piece. So so one that I'll share. So, and actually this is actually with a group of friends of mine. So I turned 50 in 2017. And so for my 50th birthday, I went to Vegas with 5 of my high school friends. So there were 6 of us who had all gone to Vegas to celebrate our 50th together. And we'd known each other for years, ever since high school. So for many years, and had always stayed in touch. And so while we were in Vegas, there was one evening where a couple of my friends decided to separate and go someplace else, and then the 4 of us were left. And so one of my friends had said, "Oh, why don't you give us all readings?" And I normally don't really like to give mediumship readings to people I know, and I know their families, I know who's in spirit for them, and I've met their families, so I wasn't sure how it was going to go, but I thought, oh sure, why not? So I gave them all readings, and readings went really well, and spirit was really good about giving me information I wouldn't have known, so that really helped in terms of the validation piece. But then the last day that we were there, so all 6 of us were together in the one of the hotel rooms, and we were just sort of getting ready for our last night and doing some things. And so my one friend who had not been present for the initial readings, she apparently every time I got up to leave the room, she was getting tapped on the shoulder. And so after about the 3rd time that this happened, and she kept looking around thinking it was me, and it wasn't me. I was nowhere to be found. I wasn't in, I had left the room, and it was back and forth. And so after the 3rd time, she said to me, someone's trying to get my attention. And, so then I said, okay, well, I'll give you a reading. So with everybody there, so I ended up giving her a reading, and her father had come through, but it was just for me, it was incredible to be able to do that for my friends. And it was a really, it was a very neat experience for me as well, because I was used to giving readings for strangers, but not so much for family or friends. And it was just a fantastic opportunity for us to all connect in a very different way. So I will always cherish, especially as one of my friends, she ended up passing the following year. So she suicided and the following year. So unfortunately, and so that will always hold really special memories for me. The other one I wanted to mention is, so shortly before the pandemic started, and I was doing a few readings. And so typically when I would do readings, sometimes animals would come through, but typically they would come through with somebody else. I would be able to describe them, and that was I wasn't really communicating with the animals. And some other people that I knew in my circle were really great with animal communication, so when they would get animals coming through, they could really communicate. And I remember I was chatting with a friend of mine who she's also a psychic medium, and I said, I really want to be able to communicate with animals, and I guess it's just not my strong suit. I just it's just not something that I've been able to experience, but that's what I want to experience. So the following day, I was giving a reading for this woman. So when the woman showed up at the door, she had her 2 little boys in tow with her, which surprised me because she hadn't told me she was bringing her little boys with her. And she said to me, she said, they're not staying. They're going to go sit in the van when you and I talk, but they wanted to come in because they just lost their dog and they wanted to have a conversation with you. So I thought, okay. So they all came in, sat down, and I focused on the 2 little ones. And they were maybe about 5 and 8, I think. So I started tuning in. And it was so interesting because so their dog came through. And when their dog came through, it was as though I was communicating with anybody else in spirit, with a person in spirit. The dog started describing to me some issue with its mouth. And when I relayed that, Mother confirmed that the dog had some deformity in its mouth. And then I said, there's this, really like they banged into something and got hurt. And she said, yeah, about a week before he passed, he had, he'd taken a turn in the corner and smuck kind of thing. And the dog was telling me about how the boys were, so individual memories that the dog had shared with each of the boys differently. And both boys were very different in terms of their relationship with the dog. So I shared that. So I was able to provide them with some closure. And it was the it was such a cool experience to be able to do that. And, and it's so incredible because, when you ask the universe for something, they give it, they really do give it. So, and that's what happened the following that day. Literally, it was the next day after I had made that statement that I had that experience, and it was great.
That's really interesting. In fact, that's one topic that we have coming up later on here on Haunting Live podcast is animal communication. We have some experts actually coming on to talk just about that topic. So it's really interesting that you brought that up today too. Looking forward to that too, to get into how mediumship communicates with animals too. So, have you had any other chance to communicate with animals, or was it just that one time?
That was, yeah, that would probably be the most recent time that happened. It hasn't happened since, but then the opportunity hasn't arisen for that. Most of the people who I've given readings for, it's been primarily their loved ones have come through. Yeah. So I don't know whether I'll experience that again or not, but I mean, things are always evolving and changing, and yeah, it's a growth process, right? I mean, you're always kind of the more readings that you provide, the more you learn and change. Even just when I look back to when I initially started giving readings, and just how I received information was different than how I receive it now, and so things do shift and change over time. So I'm always open to whatever experiences might come my way.
Actually, let's explain that a little bit. How have things changed for you since you used to do readings to nowadays? Is it changed a lot for you, or?
I found when so when the pandemic initially started, I was getting a lot of phone calls, like a lot of phone calls for mediumship readings, a lot of calls for psychic readings, and then once I started mentioning the Akashic Record readings, I was getting a few Akashic Record readings as well. But yeah, it's been fairly busy over the past year, I would say. I think a lot of people are needing they're needing that connection more now than ever. And I'm getting people from all walks who are wanting to connect with me. I've had a couple of people connect with me long distance. About a month ago, I think it was, I had somebody from England who wanted an Akashic Record reading. So I provided that for her. Yeah. So, and actually I've done a couple of readings. I also had done a mediumship reading for her months and months ago as well. So she was a repeat client. But yeah. So I'm getting a few different people contacting me.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's definitely changed the way we do things here in the mediumship field. It's changed a lot, and I think it's gotten a lot more personal too. I think that people are reaching out a lot more. I think they're wanting to find out things, especially nowadays. They want direction. They want to find out there's certain things, what's going to happen. They want to know that they're secure and stuff like that. So, what would you say to people? I usually try to ask this too, just before we let you go here today. I usually try to ask people that we have on, what would you say to people that we're in lockdown number 3 here in Ontario right now, so they might be experiencing things that they haven't experienced before in the paranormal or even mediumship with communicate with spirit. They might not know even what's happening. What would you say to people that are experiencing things that they don't know what's going on?
Well, I think first, trust the information that you're receiving, and really trust that. Really set the intention as well that that you're only receiving information from love and light, right? So you want to always set that intention that that's the information that you're receiving. You're receiving information from your loved one. Our loved ones are always wanting to connect us. They're always there walking that path with us, walking our journeys with us. And they're always there guiding us. Even if we're not aware of them, they're always there. They see what's going on. They know what's happening. They know how you're feeling. And really trust that, and have those conversations with them, whether you do it out loud, whether you do it privately. A lot of times loved ones will come to us in our dreams. And so if you're having vivid dreams where it feels like you're having a conversation, you are having a conversation with your loved ones during those times. You can ask them for signs that they're around. I know for my brother David, it's always very interesting because with my father makes his presence known to me very quietly. If I'm in the room with a medium, she says he'll talk her ear off, but with me it comes in very silently. But with my brother, it's very, very different. So if I ask, if I get a sign from my brother that he's around, or if I sense his presence, if I ask him, Dave, is it you? I will get shivers up and down my entire body. It's like he's got this special signature way of communicating with me to let me know that that's him. So just trust that they're there with you, and they're always there to support you, and things will definitely get better. It's a huge struggle right now, but take that time for self-care. This is what I tell all of my clients: take that time for self-care. If you meditate, then meditate. If you do yoga or you do other forms of exercise, do those things. Go for walks. You can go for walks in nature can be really meditating and really grounding as well. For some people, even gardening, getting in the soil can be really grounding for people. Anything that you can do to be able to walk away from just the stresses of what's been going on. Make sure that you take time on a daily basis, even if it's 5 minutes or 10 minutes out of your day, but on a daily basis, you need to take some time to really unplug and do something just for you, and that really helps. In order for us to be able to connect energetically with spirit, or even just connect with our own intuitions in terms of knowing where do we go, and what direction do we need to be going in right now. In order to really go within and listen, you need to be vibrating at a high energetic level, and that's tough for everybody right now with what's going on. So anything that you can do to bump up that vibrational energy, do it, because it will really help in the long run. With moving through this pandemic.
Yeah, no, I agree fully on that. It's definitely good to recharge yourself. It's good to disconnect, as they say, from the devices once in a while, and just sort of reconnect with spirit and energy and all that. So recharge. And especially nowadays, it's good to just sit and meditate. You have time, so why not, right? Just sit down, have a meditation, take 5 minutes, and relax before you go to bed or go to sleep. So definitely agree with that. Well, do you want to promote your website just before we go, and anything else that you're currently just working on these days?
Absolutely. So my website is www.moonstonmedium.com. And I also have a Facebook page, so you can search me up on Moonstone Medium. And I have a Twitter page too for those who are on Twitter as well. So follow me on all of those, and I do try to post regularly when I can, and feel free to message me. You can either Facebook message me, or you can email me from the website if you want. Whatever's easier is fine. So yeah, and I'm so I have at this point, I'm really I have a few things sort of on the back burner that I'm thinking of, but they're really back burner things right now, because right now it's just my entire focus and my energy is really going to wanting to be of service to whoever is called to connect with me. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. We have some stuff in the back burner too that we're hoping to get forward here, hopefully by the summer or the fall. So, but thank you, Tina, so much for being here. I appreciate it. Everybody can go check out your site. It's the Moonstone Medium. And thank you so much for being here on Haunting Live Podcast today. We appreciate you taking your time.
Yeah, thank you so much, Trevor. It's been a pleasure being here.
Yeah, it's been awesome to talk to you, and you're welcome back anytime, of course. So have a great weekend, and thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that was Tina, the Moonstone Medium, and we thank her so much for being here on our guest here for this episode this week on Haunting Live Podcast. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thank you for following us on Facebook as usual. Thank you for watching live today if you managed to catch us live. And if not, you can always tune in later on. We always upload things to our YouTube channel, as well as you can listen in to any of our podcasts on the podcast apps. Just pick your favorite app. I'm sure you'll find Haunting Live Podcast there to listen to later on. And as always, don't forget, Chris here at Haunting Live Podcast does his mediumship readings with the angels and messages from the other side. You can catch him twice a week now, on Wednesdays at 8:30 and Saturdays at 3 o'clock, right here on Haunting Live Facebook. We do them live as well, so any questions you want, feel free to either message him ahead of time and he'll get answers for you, or you can chat directly in live chat with him at that time. Also, don't forget, we have our tickets for our next public event on sale right now, which is Ghost of the Queen's Inn. That's going to be held in Stratford at the Queen's Inn Hotel, and that's going to be Halloween weekend this year, 2021. Tickets are on sale right now for that. It's a 2-day event, Friday, Saturday, and you get both days for $140. You can check the tickets on our website at HauntingLivePodcast.com under the events tab. Also, you guys can check out our merch. We have a lot of new, interesting merch available on our website as well under HauntingLivePodcast.com/merch. And go check out the new items that are available under our merch page on the website. A lot of great, interesting items like healing stuff, crystal stuff. We got cleansing stuff. We got some homemade materials as well, like spiritual bags you can store your crystals in, or your tarot cards, or whatever you want. And some other interesting items as well. So thank you guys so much for being here today. We appreciate it. Hope you had a great weekend. And we look forward to being here back next week here on Haunting Live Podcast. Thanks very much, guys, and we'll catch you next week.
Did you hear that?